Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Choose to Challenge. I am LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group and the Bradford Group Consulting. I want to thank everyone on E360 TV who are following us. We love coming on because this platform is designed to challenge your mindset, status quo systems, things that are keeping us boxed in and elevating from our best and highest version. And sometimes it can be a little frightening to challenge the things that appear to be a place of normalcy. But when we step outside of that box and we really aspire to greater heights, we can see what's truly possible. And today I am so excited because I have a very special guest joining me, Mr. Rick Spann, retired lieutenant colonel with the U.S. Army. Rick Spann is an influencer, an innovator, an inventor. He is an author, a speaker, a teacher, and a mover and shaker. And right now, he is out there of grassroots efforts, letting people know that your voice matters. And what do we mean by that? Well, we have audiences from around the world, but right now, here within the U.S., where we are based, this is a pivotal and critical time in our nation because it is voting season. And Rick is out there on knocking on doors, on those phone banks, challenging people to rise up and use the power of their voice through the vote. And so right now I'm going to bring Rick up. How's it going, Rick?
Thank you, Mrs. Bradford. Thank you for having me on your program. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you, Rick. And we don't have to. We can put the formalities aside. Rick and I've known each other for 40 years. He is actually my long-standing business partner. But what I want to do is I want to just focus on a critical message right now, Rick, because we know sometimes individuals feel a little sidelined, perhaps even marginalized when it comes to exercising their voice, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's feeling bullied, right? Just feeling like they cannot express who they are. I'd like you to take a few minutes and just speak to our listening audience about why knowing your voice is important and being confident to speak that voice and even translate that spoken word to exercising it with the vote. So you can take it away. That was a lot, but I think you can handle
it. I'd like to let the listeners know that every vote counts. And a lot of people don't believe that. But when you think about it, a vote or a non-vote are equally as powerful. And by that, I mean that if you don't vote, you're in essence is voting against yourself. And so the only way that people can know what's going on or if they will ever be heard is to vote. And by voting, you show the country, the world, your party or what, and it doesn't matter which party, but they know what issues that really excite you. Now, the thing that a lot of people get into a tiff about is that, oh, what I want will not happen, or it hasn't happened, or it can't happen. But what we have to realize is that no one is an island. So everything that happens has to be a part of the whole. So everyone has to market their idea. They have to get buy-in from other people. They have to get enough buy-in so that the process that we have put in place in a democracy will catch hold of what it is that they want. Then the parliamentary procedures kick in. There has to be some type of organization. There's a vote. You have to get enough people to vote. And then we have what we call the elections. And so if you have an idea or you have something that you want to see enacted, then you have to get involved in the process. It's not enough to say, well, I didn't vote and it didn't happen. Well, likely that'll be the case if you don't vote. The old adage, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And that's true in politics. So in everyday politics, the people that get things done are the people uh, that let people know or let the process know that we need to get things done. So if you go into a neighborhood and you want a new street sign or you want a new speed bump, well, you can't go and just start pouring cement or putting a sign in. You have these organizations called HOAs, and you have to get buy-in. You have to get the HOA to say, the issue is people speeding down the street or kids in the area and people are speeding and their kids on. So now the HOA have to agree with you that it is a problem. Then they have to agree what to do about the problem. Can they afford the problem? So at all levels, your vote actually count. I
Let's pause right there because I want to dial back on something that you started with, and I really loved how you quoted an old poem, which is, no man is an island entire to himself. Every man's a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And we hear people crying about what they don't like, what they want to see. But then when we have these avenues where we can influence, where we can be a part of the solution, a part of change, more often people sit on the sidelines thinking, ah, they've got it handled. Someone else is going to do it. I'm just one person. What is one person really going to do? Where would you say to that individual who's thinking that way?
so uh, and I like the way you brought that in because that's exactly what's happening. Most people are highly opinionated, but they don't put sweat equity in. They don't get involved in the process, and so to sit back and just think that the greater community is going to automatically incorporate your want, need, or desire into their process and give it the priority that is needed. Because in all cases, when you're dealing in a community, there's going to be what we call, and I'm ex-military, what we call high demand, low density assets. So there's going to be a lot of things needed, but there's not going to be a lot of resources to get those things done. And so if you're in a situation and you want something done and you're not in the process, when I say in the process, I mean, are you involved in the local organizations where things are getting done? Are you involved in the local block club? Are you involved in the local partisan politic apparatus? And I push that one real hard because I'm involved in knocking on doors and doing things. And I come across people that profess to be in one party or another party. Then I say, oh, well, that's great. Who is your precinct chief? Who is your committee chairman? Who is your community organizer? And almost to to a one, they don't know. And if you don't know who your precinct chief, community organizer, then you're not in the party. You might vote that the way that the party vote, but the party is a 501. I want to say C9 or whatever, but it's a bona fide meeting. It's like if you're in church and you have a usher board meeting, if you if you're in baseball and you have a baseball association, all these groups are put together so that they can come up with a collective good for the group. The group just doesn't get good on its own. It doesn't solve problems on its own. It has to come together, and you have to apply resources. You have to apply strategy. And you have to collectively decide what it is you want to do and what order you want to fix those things in. And so most people, if they don't participate, or if they're not involved, or if they're not going to the meetings, and both these groups have to have meetings, according to our rules of engagement for us IRS rules and all that. You have to have meetings, you have to have a constitution and bylaw. So if you're not going to those things, or if you don't know where they are, or that they exist, then you're not involved in the process. So the reason that, and I'll go to the scripture, my people have not because they ask not. Well, the only place you could ask for a democratic fix is in the democratic process. And that will put you in one of the groups that we have put in our country that sort of bring those issues up to the point that we make decisions and try to get solutions to the problem of the process.
Let's let's tie this back to a book that you wrote a while ago entitled "Man Up," a Black plan for the spiritual and a plan, excuse me, not a black plan, but it is a black plan, a plan for the spiritual and organizational retooling of Black America. Again, Man Up, a plan for the spiritual and organizational retooling of Black America. Now, we know that we have those in power and we have our sub communities and those that are marginalized. And we know from the history of this country the challenges that have faced just people of color overall. Why was it so important for you to write this book? And this book actually is a message to the Black community. And can you tie this into the time that we're facing right now? So, the challenges we're facing, why it's important for us to come together collectively and retool and organize. And again, the power of our voice at tomorrow, when we go to the polls, right?
Right. Okay, so the challenges that we as a Black community or what inspired me to write the book is that the challenges that we're currently facing are not new. Uh, and what I looked at when I looked around and saw that, hey, some of the things that our forefathers were experiencing, we're still experiencing. And also, why wasn't it fixed, and how do we fix it? So we don't cry over spilled milk. So I took the point and said, hey, okay, we didn't get it all fixed the first 10 or 12 or how many times we've tried since slavery, since coming to this country. We didn't get it fixed. Of course, we want a quick fix. So my thing is like, wow, no wonder our forefathers didn't get it fixed, because there's a yin and a yang. So there's a force working with us and a force working against us. And we have to deal with those forces. We can't just say, voila, this is the way we want it to be, because we all share a common space. And when I say we all share, I mean Black, white, male, female, tall, dark, etc. We all share this common space. And so just imagine if for 400 years, the part of the common space that we were sharing was a subset of someone else's common space. Now we want to share an equal space. We don't want to be a subset anymore. We don't want to be a second-class citizen or three-fifths of a man, or in one case of women, women don't want to be in the household. They want to be in the community at large and corporate America. So that space, since we were not in it, either deliberately not put in it or we were too complacent to get in it, that space was consumed by someone else. So like water, water will fill the area unless you contain it. So the people that are in that space had spread out over the years, and they don't want to give that space up. They don't want to share it. They don't want to agree that we all deserve a part of the space. In their mind, they think that, oh, I I earned this space. They don't realize that through oppressive means and through illegal acts, they earn the space, but not through fairness and equitable acts. So we have to deal with that. That's why I said, well, let me write the book. How do we do this without tearing the fabric of society apart? So first we have to do a couple of things, and they can happen simultaneously. We have to build from within. We have to realize how things are done in the space that we're trying to be a part of. And once we know that space, what are the rules of engagement in that space, and how do we put ourselves in that space so that we could try to achieve equality in the best way possible. So that's what made me write the book. So bring it to today. We get a step forward. You know, we have Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and we push, and for that generation, we achieved all that we could achieve. But then 3 or 4 generations later, the seniors or they've died off, and then the message is lost, and the effort that it took to get that little bit of increase or get that little bit of success starts to fall back because the yin and the yang. If we fall back, everyone goes back to their old ways. And so the people that occupied the space for 400 years as the, I would say, white supremacists, stereotypical leaders, they want the space back. Now you have several cases before the Supreme Court where the education advances that the Black community had made, now the white community want those spaces back. And what has happened is Martin Luther King and all our leaders have died off in 4 or 5 generations. You got new kids and they want to go back to what their grandparents, because they, you know, everything's local. They were taught that in the good old days when men were men and women were doggone proud of it. So I wanted to put in the book that, hey, the good old days has never existed, and the good days are yet to come, but we all had to continue to work and strive, and we can't get tired. We have to teach our children and our children's children that the things that we fought for, it's up to them to continue the fight, to struggle until everyone is equal. Every woman is equal to every man, every child is equal to every adult, and every color is equal to every color, and every culture is equal. Until we achieve that, we can't get complacent. So I took it upon myself to say that we have to take some blame and that we allow complacency to get in, but that's okay. We're here and we'll fix it. But it takes effort. The same effort that Martin Luther King did, we need to do now. The same effort that Abraham Lincoln did, we need to do now. So we can never rest on our laurels until the lowest of us. And when I go to the Bible, Jesus says, "Suffer not the little children, or what you do to the least of them, you do unto me." Until the lowest person or lowest effort is taken care of and treated equal, we have to continue to fight and to struggle for one another, not just for Blacks, but all the people that make up the common areas.
I like what you said. We have to continue to struggle for one another. It's like just because I may have or I may have achieved, but I look to my left and to my right and I see suffering or lack of access on either side, then have I really achieved when we think about community and what we are looking to be as humanity? And right now, Rick, around the globe, like never before, there's a huge push or emphasis about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and access. That's the buzz in the corporate place. But when you think about it, it's not a new buzz. It's just an extended, I feel like it's an extended label, right? Because if diversity and inclusion, if the processes had worked, I don't think we would be having this conversation. The component that I want to talk about, and I think your book speaks to that, is the element of belonging, right? You can tell me that you're diverse and that you're inclusive, but then when I look at your landscape, everyone that looks like me is at the lower rungs. So yes, you have checked the box of being diverse. You have checked the box of being inclusive, but you've blocked access. And I do not feel like I belong, like I should have a seat at the table. And that's one of the things that you fight for. And like with Shirley Chisholm, one of the things she said is, if they don't give you a seat, then you bring your own chair, you create your own table. And so you're challenging not only the African American communities, but other communities to think about creating our own and then tying into the whole continent, if you will, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. I think unless we have a coalition of like people to fight for those that agree or disagree with us, we'll never get there. Everyone has to be a part of the struggle, to include those that think that they're elite, those that think that they're privileged, those that are oppressed, those that are treated as second class or third class, those that are poor. They have to be at the table. And if you are at the table and you look around and don't see them at the table, you have to go back and bring them to the table, or the meeting shouldn't go. And my my point of the book is that, hey, you are your brother's keeper. Bring them to the table. I, I, like Jesus say, hey, everyone, the woman at the well, or whatever, everyone should be at the table. No one's better than anyone. Just because you think you have wealth or you have power, you think that you're better than me. No, you're not. And I should be at the table. The homeless guy should be at the table. Until we get them there, we should be the representative. And once they get there, they can represent themselves. I often talk about a lot of people want to speak for us in a private meeting that we're not there. We want to speak on the Supreme Court and the Roe decision, Roe v. Wade, or the Dobbs decision. They want to speak for the women. They want to speak for the populace. And when the populace have let their the majority know that, hey, we want freedom of health care. And that's all that is. It's not what you do with your health care, how you do. You want the freedom for health care, but you're not at the table. 70% of the entire country has said, we want body autonomy. But we get 9 people to say, 9 people that are skewed to one form or another, or partisan type thing, to just say, you 70% of the country don't know what you're talking about. And those are the reasons why everyone has to be at the table. 9 people does not a country make. And we can't allow it, even though we have a representative form of government. We have to have a point where the majority rule. The only reason we have a representative form of government is because you can't get a table big enough for 320 million people to come to the meeting every month. So you want to say, hey, I sent a proxy vote, but what I'm sending, I want heard. You'll speak for me. You're not there to speak in spite of me. You're there to speak based upon I say. And so now we have allowed the tail to wag the dog. So when I say that we all have to be at the table and bring those that we don't see to the table and ensure they stay at the table.
I like what you're saying, and one of the things, and this is going to be a little controversial, but this is about choose to challenge, and let's talk to when opportunity does present itself, when individuals have found themselves excluded from the table, but suddenly they are at the table. Suddenly, that position of leadership, executive leadership, has come to play, or perhaps you're now a business owner that can influence what's happening within your local and state politics, or at the community grassroots level, but you choose not to because you're comfortable that I've arrived. Let's talk to that person or persons, both women and men, because I believe that and I'll use this example as a financial analyst. I understand the world of finances, and I've been able to, guide whether it's my business or my life and other companies accordingly. But I feel that I have a fiduciary responsibility to share the knowledge so that people can get there that much faster than I did, that individuals can have the opportunity to create sustainability or build that generational wealth. For me to just sit back and say, okay, well, I know how to cross the I's and dot the T's, and you figure it out on your own, I think that's wrong. But more often than not, I see that once we arrive, and I use we in quotes, we get comfortable, we get complacent, and suddenly we get out of the fight. So let's talk to that person.
So I often say that some people drink the Kool-Aid or they read their own press. And if you look in the world of sports, you always hear people about the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and all that. And my thing is, why do you want to be the greatest of all time? That means that other people are not as great. But my argument has always been that anyone can do what I do. I might have had a break, or I might have overcome some obstacle quicker than the other person had. But that person could do it. And as a commander in the military, I would often tell my people that my job is to, and even in the church, I would say my job is to put myself out of business. My job is to teach you everything I know so that if you want to replicate it, then you can replicate it and we can share the space. It's, we have enough to go around and we want to think based upon greed and a whole lot of other things that are not of God, for the religious people, or just not right. If you're an ungodly person, it's still not right for you to have more than your fair share of a common resource, because the earth belongs to all. It doesn't belong to white, it doesn't belong to natives, it doesn't belong to black. It belongs to all living things. And what our job is to regulate or do things so that nobody shall lack. And so in our corporate society or in our capitalist society, we allow the propaganda to pit me against my brother and my sister. And that's just not fair. It's not fair to say that if I am a billionaire, I have to step on the head of other people and hold them down in order for my billions to, in order for me to maintain my billions. But that's not true. Wealth, we all can be wealthy and we all can have $10 a piece, and we're all wealthy within that 10. Once we learn how to manage and to share the common areas, we don't need one to have more than the other because it doesn't give them any more life. It doesn't make them any wiser. And you and I both know, if you talk to people on the street or talk to the homeless, and I was telling my son just the other day that when we were in Sierra Vista, there was this female millionaire that lived on the street because she wanted to. And her family would find her periodically and bring, I think she was from Phoenix, and they take her back home. And she'd come right back out. But she was so comfortable. And when you talk to her, she's a very learned woman, self-made far as the millions, but she just enjoyed interacting with the low people in the area that were in the homeless area. So she never put herself higher than anyone, and she didn't have to be on the street, but her choice. And I like that humility. It's like you don't have to have an 11,000 square foot mansion, and you walk past or you drive past people sleeping under a piece of tarp. How can we say that we're God's country and to allow this to happen? And some of us that are older that realize that up until Reagan came into office, we didn't have a homeless population. We had people that had mental issues, and we had state homes, and we had agencies that would care for the people that didn't have the capacity or were down, drug addicts or what have you, and they'd go to the agency, get rehab, then to come back out and partake in society. Well, the corporatists just said, we're going to put everybody out the street. They close all the state homes. Look at you got military people. We have problems. Some of us have post-traumatic stress disorder. So we come back and we don't have anywhere to stay with that stress, a combat-related stress. So a lot of your homeless people are military. Well, before 80, we could go to the veteran homes, and they had all kinds of little campuses that we could stay until we get our head together, or if we never got together, we had a place that wouldn't put us in the criminal system. And we as a society have allowed this to happen, yet we have more billionaires per capita than anyone in the world. And so we claim to be a Christian and a caring nation, but we've allowed ourselves to listen to the press to say that because I could make $1 billion, I'm better, I deserve it, and other people don't deserve it. And whatever reason that they're not a billionaire is their fault, and they shouldn't be helped at all. And we have to fix that. I can't hear you now.
LaWanna Bradford here with Choose to Challenge. I'm here with my special guest, retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricky J. Spann. We're talking about don't be silenced and your voice matters. Rick, hopefully you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Perfect. We're good. Well, the commercial break we featured in the commercial, my company, the Bradford Group, which deals with mortgages. We are a commercial and investment mortgage company, but we started on the residential side. And I just thought it was a perfect segue into what you were talking about, whether we're dealing with our rising homeless population. And when you were talking about what happened during the Reagan era, I remember as Atlanta was preparing for the '96 Olympics, right? It's about let's get our city ready for the world, which every city does during whoever's hosting the Olympics. Well, there were government assisted homes, projects, whatever you want to call them, in critical areas, right? Where some of the major venues were going to be. Oh, we can't have that, right? So of course they clean up, they beautify the area, and it looks great. Revitalizing is the actual term. Yet, where did the people go? Right? That's the question. Where did they go? Because they definitely couldn't afford the homes and apartments and things that went there. So where did they go? Well, suddenly the suburbs are complaining that, whoa, why do we have all these homeless people? Well, they weren't originally homeless, but became because they weren't able to afford the home. But now look at what's happening. Rising inflation, rising prices of homes. It is almost impossible for a first-time home buyer to find something that their current salaries or wages can afford. And then you look at an apartment. I was listening to the news because live both in Arizona and in Georgia, and they were saying the average one bedroom in Tucson was ranging between $1,200 and $1,600 for a one bedroom apartment. So let's talk about this whole equation here, because it still goes to having our voice. What can people do when you're at the point where you have rising inflation, but our salaries, our wages are not keeping up? There's not a corresponding increase with prices, and you have a corresponding increase with your take home. No, that's not happening. When you're looking at what we earn today compared to 5-10 years ago per dollar, we're actually earning less, right?
Correct. So what we know to be a fact is that the problems that we're facing aren't new. And what we're finding out is that what we think are issues are not necessarily the issue. And I say that to say that you have giant corporatists or capitalists that have decided that they needed more than their fair share. So the reason that the wages haven't increased with the cost of living and all that is because the people that control the wages are are subject to usury. They're exploiting the masses, and so in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and all that, when the union was very strong, the labor unions. What had happened is that from the onset of the labor union until about the late 80s, when Reagan destroyed the labor unions, the poverty had decreased in this country almost tenfold. There was very few impoverished people. So basically, what that meant is that most people could make a living wage. And the unions created a middle class that was like 70% of the country. Well, we're not paying attention. People are not involved. People are not voting. People are not knowing what the real problem is. And people are fighting the wrong enemy. You know, you have black fighting whites, but we're not at odds with each other. We want a family. We want a nice job to take care of that family, and we want to live in peace. But when you create distractions like, oh, the blacks are coming to take your jobs, or the Jews are taking your job, when you create those kind of things and you bust the unions, now our poverty rate has increased because the unions, which guaranteed or fought for fair wages and fair housing and fair labor practices, they're gone. So now the unions make up less than 40% of the country. So what that means, when you lose the union, you lose the right to keep fair wages. You lose the right to live in a fair housing market, because the labor union gave everyone enough money to live in a average middle class neighborhood. Well, when you bust the union, then you go back to where the capitalist uh, gets to make 200 or 300 times the lowest salary of their worker. Now, when you had unions, they made profit, but they were not given the usury. They did not take advantage, or they just didn't lay people off and throw them on the street in order to make their profits higher. And those are the kind of things that we need to vote and get enough votes so that we could fight. Because what we're fighting, and what I view the enemy as, is that we've allowed ourselves to be hoodwinked and duped into thinking that men are fighting women and whites are fighting black. But what we're really fighting is greed. We're fighting greed, and we're fighting capitalists or oligarchs, for those who know the term, and we're fighting authoritarianism because they're free in every country. A billionaire is free in Russia. A billionaire is free in China. But a poor person or a middle class person is suffering based upon his environment. And we talked about when the Olympics, when they moved all the homeless out of the city and put them in the suburbs. Well, they just threw them on the streets in the suburbs. They didn't give them adequate housing. They literally just did what Ron DeSantis did. They put them in a bus and they moved them over there. Didn't give them bus fare to get back. Didn't give them housing in those new areas. And I'm from Detroit. Gentrification. Detroit, we couldn't get any government money under the Stimulus Act. The Council of Government wouldn't approve money to revitalize Detroit. So Detroit started to imploding. And then now that the people are living or had to move to the suburbs or go somewhere, now the people are coming back and buying their property cheap. In fact, other countries are buying their property cheap. China, Saudi Arabia, they're buying plots of land and become the landlord. So I say that to say that your vote, your voice, if you don't take and vote in every election and take time to study and understand, or get with someone that understands the actual issues, sometimes you'll be fighting the wrong enemy. So your vote and your voice has to come with knowledge. So the only way you get knowledge is to sit around those of us that are active. You become active, and your voice will understand, and you'll help us to achieve things. I go to these meetings, and sometimes I'm a minority in the meeting. I'm the devil minority, and we have issues that you and I have discussed, and I bring them up at the meeting, but I don't have the voting power. Not enough of me with this issue as a member of that group that could bring the issue to the floor and to vote that this issue would get priority in the order of other issues. And those are, sometimes it's just that simple. You got to find the group, be involved, and let your issue be done, and come in big enough numbers that you could affect change.
You know what you said is, some people may listen to this and think, "Oh my gosh, don't be silent. Your voice matters. This is too much for me. I don't want to get knee deep into politics, and that's just too much." Well, I want to challenge you to say, do you care about having the right services around your neighborhood, community services? Do you care about the maintenance of your roads and bridges? Do you care about the schools that your children go to? If you care about those and you want to have a voice and you want to influence them, guess what? It's a vote, right? It's a vote, but I find so many people are they're pushing back, and I want to go to this point because when I mentioned to a couple of people that I was going to have this show, I was told, "Oh, LaWanna, you should never bring politics or religion on your platform." And I thought, well, it's my platform, and this happens to be called Choose to Challenge. So again, it's stepping out of what you're telling me I can't do and showing you what I can do. And as a Black woman who's hosting an E360 TV show that is challenging the systems, the norms, the stereotypes, the things that are keeping us as a community, as marginalized people, I can't sit here and not use this platform to just create conversation, to create a level of awareness. So I want to say thank you again for coming on this platform. But I want to ask you a question, because you mentioned greed. Now let's talk about the small business owner, where again, if we work as a community, we may be in the same lane of business, but together we're able to work and have more influence. Talk to the people who they talk a good game. They talk about the sisterhood and the brotherhood of organizations, but really they're operating in a lack mindset, a fear mindset. It's like, if I share, then that means you're going to take all my cookies, instead of realizing there's enough cookies to go around, right?
Right. So, and that's what I try to say to everyone. Now, if all of the people, which, 7 billion people, we breathe the same air every day, and we're okay with that, unless someone does something to take more than their fair share of oil, of air. If someone does more polluting than others, then you're going to affect, what everyone else has. What we have to do is realize that if we all are reasonable and rational stewards, then we can share this common space, and we will have enough to last, in perpetuity. But we want to say that if I don't get all of it, then someone else will get it, and I will have lack. But that's not true. If we're good stewards, if no one takes more than their fair share, then we can feed the earth 10, 12, 30 times over, and no one will lack. And I go back to the scripture when they said to go and tell the rich people to go and sell all that they have and bring it back to the body, so that they could be divided amongst the masses, so that none shall lack. Well, all us Christian right and name it, claim it guys, they don't preach that gospel, but that is the gospel. We need to share the stuff because no man woke up with 10,000 hectares of land. Somehow, either he got it, inherited, or cheated someone out of the land. And that land that produced 10 hectares of agriculture is going to feed him and his family, but it shouldn't exploit everyone else that it feeds. So the reasonable cost of bringing these things, it's like, hey, yeah, you should make, it cost me water, seeds, and all that, and a small profit so you can reinvest. But that's it. You shouldn't exploit. I want to make record profits. I'm finding out that here in Arizona we have a drought. But do you know that Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other foreign countries are pumping millions of gallons of water out of Arizona's aquifers every day? And we're looking around, where's the water going? Well, our government officials that want power and to keep getting elected have sold this water, groundwater, right off from under us. And we're here fighting about white supremacy and all that. No, it's the have and the have not. The haves are getting us to fight a war that doesn't really or shouldn't exist. But they're have sold this state and other states alike to take all this. We are producing alfalfa for the Saudis to feed their cows. They're taking the water to grow product to take all the way back, and they don't put anything back into Arizona. And somehow these governments or government politicians have sold this, and the people don't know it. Well, we have to study, so we're wondering, like, well, why am I fighting other people for water? Well, because our water is going overseas, and that's fine. But we should be able to not have the drought and still share our water, but it shouldn't be stolen or given to the people and let the people in Arizona suffer. We have to come up with a better plan for the collective body that live on the earth. And if we don't do that through our voice and our vote, then we'll never. First of all, we won't know it happened, and we'll never get to equality.
No, I totally agree. I'm trying to pull something up if I can find it. But we have to get our heads out of the sand and look around and be true to ourselves and say, okay, now that I'm aware, how can I be a part of the solution in my sphere of influence, right? Because if I can influence and change the mindset of my family, and my children, and my community, then I'm shifting. I'm making significant change. I'm making change that I can see and feel. And I want to read something to you. And this is by Gil Scott-Heron. The revolution will not be televised.
Right.
And he says the revolution will not be televised. And this was done in the 70s. But it's pretty profound. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Adams, and Spiro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Stephen McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner, because the revolution will not be televised, brother. And he goes on to talk about how the third world is making a down payment on the first world. And this whole poem is basically a cry to wake up. Like Spike Lee is always saying, wake up, because things are happening and you think it's one thing, right? Like he said, it will not be televised, but you're looking at what the media is feeding you, and you're missing what's really going on. You know, or like you said, our water is being taken from us, the fundamental necessity of life, but nothing's coming back in. And we're sitting around fighting over what we shouldn't be fighting over. And Rick, before we go, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to close us out. So I want you to kind of give your take on what I shared about the poem and just what you see, and then some closing remarks to our listening audience about why it is so important to not be silenced.
So, first of all, you mentioned Gil Scott-Heron. You know, he's one of my heroes. Nikki Giovanni. So, you know, so we came through the era. Dick Gregory. All these people were in their prime, and they were fueling us and causing us to be aware. And some of us caught that awareness, and it took hold, it took root, and we became activists. And that allowed us, some of us got a better status in life. You know, that was the era where more Black people and went to college. And so we went to college, we did this, we got the American dream. Well, what we didn't do, we didn't recreate the Nikki Giovanni's or the Gil Scott-Heron or the Dick Gregory's. What we did, we put our children in better schools. We moved to the suburbs. We moved out of the hood. But what we failed to do is to emphasize the importance of your voice and your vote and your seat at the table. Because as Gil said, the revolution won't be televised. We failed to explain to our children that, hey, the things that they're seeing is temporal. It's the things that they're not seeing that's really going on. And we mentioned, you know, the Saudis and the oil do. And in fact, most people don't even know that we don't own any refineries. The Saudis bought all the United States refineries. So Saudi, Canada, and all of them bring their oil over here to be refined in Saudi refineries, which we used to own. So when you talk about gas prices, well, we don't control gas prices. We pump more gas than we pump 18 million barrels a day. But we have to ship our gas to other countries' refineries because we've sold all our refineries to the Saudis. So now you put the blacks against the white, or you divide and conquer, and you keep the masses fighting a battle that doesn't exist. I would say, you know, the racism and all those other things are deliberate distractors put into a society so that the wealthy people could steal from both sides. Uh, you know, Black people are being taken advantage of, white people are being taken advantage of. And that's the point that we need to wake up and realize that, hey, the wealthy or the capitalists or the oligarchs is stealing from us all. And unless we get out, stay active, become active, bring people back to activism, then and vote in enough numbers that we could change that thing that we have allowed to infestate our society and destroy our democracy and destroy equality and setting us back 30 to 50 years.
I love that. And we could go on and on. We'll have to have you back on probably about 6 months to talk about, you know, the byproduct of what's about to happen in this nation. But I also want to take that conversation a little deeper into what's happening around the world. I know this show actually was born from a conversation I had 2 years ago with women representing, it was 26 women representing 5 nations. And we were talking about this very topic about the vote and the power of our voice. And it's amazing the same issues that are happening no matter where you are in the world. And people realizing we need to rise up individually and then collectively. That's where the power, that's where that momentum is going to come from. So, Rick, I want to thank you so much for all that you do and continue to do, your role in leadership, teaching our new guard, how to take this mantle, but while you continue to still champion the cause for all communities and the power of our voice. And I just want to put down here again, if you want to uh, learn more about his book, Man Up, A Plan for Spiritual and Organizational Retooling of Black America, um, you can go to Amazon.com. You can find Ricky Spann on all things social media. He's very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, so connect with him and just pick his brain, have a rich conversation. And for those of you that are thinking, how can I be on that Choose the Challenge? Well, simply email me at LaWanna@BradfordGroupMTG.com. You see it scrolling below, and just put Choose the Challenge in the heading, and I or a member of my team will get back with you, and we'll see about getting you on this show. Well, Rick, thank you again so much for being a part of Choose the Challenge. It's always great to see you and have you in the house.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And to our listening audience, I just want to remind you that remember, in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, it's time to challenge, defy the odds, rise up, and know that when that intersects happens, success is inevitable. Until next week, we'll see you on Choose the Challenge. Goodbye, everyone.